Hi and good day sir and my fellow friends. My name is Nurul Faiza binti Muhammad Nazri, matrix number 279035. I am from Group 5 and below are the members from Group 5. In this presentation, we will discuss about the origin of the Neoclassical School and the three extension of economic analysis by Neoclassical School as compared to earlier classical and marginalist school. And we also will explain how Alfred Marshall combined the idea of Adam Smith and William Stanley Jevons. The first thing that I will explain is about the origin of Neoclassical school. Neoclassical economics was transformed from the thought of marginalist economics. Neoclassical economists draws the ideas from the classical and marginalist economics and make an evolution into their ideas to form the neoclassical ideas. So in a simpler word, Neoclassical economics is a combination of classical and marginalist economics. The neoclassicism implies a new form of classicism because neo means new. So when we say neoclassicism, it means we talk about a new structure of classicism. The neoclassical economists emphasize decision making and price determination at the margin. It means that they make a decision based on margins such as marginal utility, marginal cost, and marginal rate of substitution. The neoclassical school is kind of unique because it is different from other schools since it does not apply the 5 major questions which was applied in the early school, but they replace it with the 3 extension of economic analysis. Next, let us see what is the 3 extension of economic analysis introduced by Neoclassical school. The first one is value theory. In this, we will see how the 3 schools determine their market price. The value theory of the 3 schools is different from each other. How? Because in the classical school, the economists determine the market price by only looking at the supply side, while in the other hand, the economists in marginalist school use a demand side as the determination of the market price. But it is different from the neoclassical school, which use both demand and supply side to determine the market price of goods and services. The second extension that we will see now is the monetary economics. In the monetary economics extension, the economists in the neoclassical school, such as Wicksell and Fisher, took a far greater interest in emphasizing the importance and the role of money in the economy. Meanwhile, both predecessor school, which is classical and marginalist school earlier, doesn't value the role of money as much as the neoclassical school. The last extension is imperfect competition market. Neoclassical economists extended marginal analysis to market structure other than earlier school because before neoclassical school exists, the classical and marginalist school only introduced 3 types of market structure, which is pure competition, pure monopoly, and duopoly. Next, I will discuss a little bit about Alfred Marshall biography. Alfred Marshall is a creative figure in the neoclassical school. He was born on 26 July 1842 at Bermondsey, London, and died on 13 July 1924. His father, William Marshall, was a cashier in the Bank of England and an author of a tract called Men's Rights and Women's Duties. His father always overworked him to studies until he made Alfred promise him to never touch the chess and math. He forbid his son to play the chess because he said it is a waste of time, and he also tried to banish maths from Alfred's life since it was irrelevant to the ministry which the father had picked for his son's life. However, once Alfred Marshall grew up, he found interest in math, physics, and economics that made him to reject Oxford scholarship, and instead he attended Cambridge to devote himself to mathematics, physics, and economics. But throughout his life, Alfred had concern about himself, which he is a hypochondriac and hypercritical. Hypochondriac is a person who was very concerned and very anxious about their health, while for hypercritical, well, we can say that he is a perfectionist about his work, such as his writing. This kind of concern made him throw most of what he wrote away, and he even criticized Jevons for printing out his writing because he thinks he is not ready yet to publish his work to public. Now, We will moving on to Alfred Marshall contribution. The first one is Alfred Marshall popularized the modern diagrammatic approach to economics, which was problematic for the beginning students, and this approach has helped them to clarify certain basic principles. Other than that, Alfred Marshall was a great synthesizer. Synthesizer in this context means that the person is very good at combining the theory. So, Alfred Marshall was known as great synthesizer because he combined the best of classical theory with marginalist theory to produce the neoclassical economics. Besides that, according to Alfred Marshall, and economists are just like other scientists. They collect, arrange, interpret, and draw and inferences from the facts. Not just that, they also seek knowledge from the interdependence of economic phenomena and cause and effect relationships. Here I have attached some of Alfred Marshall books such as Principle of Economics, Industry and Trade, and the Economics of Industry.
A very good day to Doctor and fellow friends. I'm Chisim and I will continue the presentation by discussing the idea of classical school by Adam Smith that will be used in neoclassical school later on. The picture shown in this slide is Adam Smith's statue at Edinburgh's Royal Mount, United Kingdom. In this assignment, we focus on the theory of value stated by Adam Smith. First value is the water-diamond paradox and the second theory is labor theory of value. So we will proceed on the first theory, which is water-diamond paradox. Based on the name of this theory, it is obvious that water and diamond are objects that being used in explaining this theory. Since this is a theory of value, then some of us maybe pop up the doubt that what value means. Value actually can be defined as the utility of some particular goods that given to you or the power of purchasing other goods which the possession of that object conveys. There are two kinds of value being created in this water-diamond paradox, namely value in use and value in exchange. Value in use is illustrated by water. This value implies that item which has greatest value on use usually has frequently little or no value in exchange. Looking into our daily life, water is one of our necessities and we can't live without water. However, we can't use water to exchange things that we want. In contrast, value in exchange implies that item with greatest value in exchange has frequently little or no use value, which represented by diamond. Although the price of diamond is very expensive, besides as jewelry and as collections, it is not useful at all. Move on to the next theory, the labor theory of value in primitive society. This theory states that the cost of production determines a good's exchange value or relative price. According to Smith, labor is the only scarce resource in the economy where capital and land are either non-existent or are free goods. The relative value of a good would be determined by the amount of labor necessary to produce it. Therefore, Smith believed that labor is the real measure of the exchangeable value of all commodities. Smith has further explained this theory using deer beaver example. Let's say a hunter took 2 hours to trap a beaver and 1 hour to hunt and shoot a deer. By applying labor theory of value in primitive society, the value in exchange of the beaver equals to 2 deers or 2 hours of labor. Conclusion for labor theory of value in primitive society is labor cost equals to labor command. In other words, labor is both the source and the measure of exchange value. But after some period of time, Adam Smith realized that the growth of capital would invalidate the simple labor cost theory of value. Then the previous labor theory of value has been modified becomes labor theory of value in advanced economy. Based on this new labor theory of value, goods in the economy will be exchanged for other goods, for example for money or for labor at a figure high enough to cover wages, rent, and profits. And profits will depend on the whole value of the capital advanced by the employer. Smith also mentioned that demand does not influence the value of commodities. The cost of production, for instance wages, rent, and profits, are the only determinants of value in the long run, with the assumption that production will expand or shrink at constant cost per unit of output. Quantity of labor that a commodity can buy exceeds the quantity of labor embodied in its production by the total profits and rents. Conclusion from labor theory of value in advanced economy is labor cost is more than labor command. Since the cost of production is the factor being focused on the labor theory of value for primitive society and advanced economy, it is clearly seen that the determination of price in classical school is done by the supply side.
Next, I am going to explain about marginalist school. Under marginalist school, I will explain about some contributions of William Stanley Jevons. William Stanley Jevons was born on 1st September 1835 in Liverpool, England. He was departed on 13 August 1882 in Sussex, England. Jevons studied in University College London and Owens College in Manchester. He was influenced by Jeremy Bentham, who is a British philosopher and regarded as the founder of modern utilitarianism. Jevons is an English economist and logician, wrote the book A General Mathematical Theory of Political Economy. He was called the initiator of mathematical method in economics and was applauded for his theories. Jevons was famous for the marginal utility theory. Jevons got a public recognition on a large scale for his theories, which is called the Jevons paradox. First, Jevons solved the diamond water paradox in his value theory by explaining total utility, marginal utility, and diminishing marginal utility. Total utility is the aggregate amount of satisfaction or fulfillment that a consumer receives through the consumption of a specific good or service. Total utility is often compared to marginal utility, which is the satisfaction a consumer receives from consuming one additional unit of a good or service. The theory held that the utility of each additional unit of a commodity, the marginal utility is less and less to the consumer. When you are thirsty, for example, you get great utility from a glass of water. Once your thirst is no more, the second and third glass are less and less appealing. Feeling waterlogged, you will eventually refuse water altogether. According to Jevons, value depends entirely upon utility. To better understand total utility, one must understand the law of diminishing marginal utility, which states that as more of a single good or service is consumed, the additional satisfaction referred to marginal utility drops. The first good consumed provides the highest utility, the second good has a lower marginal utility, and so on. Therefore, total utility grows less rapidly with each additional unit consumed of the same good or service. The law of diminishing marginal utility directly relates to the concept of diminishing prices. As the utility of a product decreases, as its consumption increases, consumers are willing to pay smaller dollar amounts for more of the product. The definition of utility, however, led to a paradox when applied to prevailing price relations. Some of the classical economists were perplexed by the paradox of water and diamonds. But Jevons' law of diminishing marginal value provided an answer. Adam Smith held the opinion that the utility has no effect on the size of exchange value because water has a higher usefulness than diamonds, but a lower value. The final degree of utility or marginal utility of diamond is significantly more than the marginal utility of water, despite the fact that the total utility of water is higher than the total utility of diamonds because water is useful. Total utility of diamond is less than total utility of water because diamond is not as useful as water. However, price of diamond is more than price of water. Why? Because prices only reflect marginal utility and not total utility. Marginal utility of diamonds is more than marginal utility of water. Marginal utility of water is low due to the abundance of water, whereas marginal utility of diamonds is higher due to the scarcity of diamonds. Water supply is great, so people would prefer an extra diamond than one extra unit of water. Finally, Jevons, a proponent of the marginalist school, stressed demand or utility as a key factor in determining prices. Remember that Jevons believed that utility determines exchange value. He expressed his view in his principle of the following way. Cost of production determines supply. Supply determines final degree of utility. And final degree of utility determines value. Why then does not cost of production determine value? In his argument against the labor theory of value, Jevons said that the labor itself has an unequal value since there are infinite variations in its effectiveness. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Dania Kamila binti Muhammad Muhtar. My metric number is 278120. I'm going to continue with Alfred Marshall on his theory of value. Marshall combined two kinds of thinking on the neoclassical, which the first one is classical and the second one is marginalist. In addition, Marshall stated that neoclassical is relationship between supply, demand and price tend to produce certain results if it works by itself, and it can also be affected by society. For example, society can increase the amount of higher education utilized by the general population by decreasing the price. In this case, by providing public universities. Next part is utility and demand. Marshall stated that demand is based on the law diminishing marginal utility. The marginal utility of a commodity to anyone diminishes with every increase in the amount of it he already has. Marginal utility is the added satisfaction a consumer gets from having one more unit of goods or services. Marshall also added two important qualifications, which are the first one is time and the second one is indivisible. He relates times either with short or long time. For instance, too short an interval to consider any changes in character and taste of a particular person. While indivisible, Marshall relates to the quantities. For example, the fourth tire for an automobile will yield more satisfaction than the first three together. Measuring intangible utility. Earlier marginalists said that the strength of a person's preferences determines the amount of money the person is willing to spend to acquire some products or the amount of labor the person is willing to sacrifice to achieve some goal. Marshall measured the intangible utility by financial scale of payments. For example, we are using book and pen as a comparison. Said that book is more useful compared to the pen. So, you are willing to spend more on book than pen. And we can conclude that book is more or twice utility compared to the pen. Next, rational consumer choice. Marshall successfully tied this equal marginal rule directly to the contemporary law of demand. Marshall stated that each line of expenditure will be pushed to the point at which the marginal utility of a shilling's worth of goods will be the same as in any other direction of spending, which is marginal utility of X divided by price of X must be equal to marginal utility of Y divided by price of Y. He added that each person will attain this result by constantly watching to see whether there is anything on which he is spending so much that he would gain by taking a little away from the line of expenditure and putting it on some other line. For example, someone who must decide whether to buy a new shoes or to use the money for a vacation is weighing the marginal utilities of two different types of expenditure. Next is law of demand. Marshall's law of demand follow his notions of diminishing marginal utility and rational consumer choice. There are two types of demand. The first one is quantity demanded, which is we can see the movement along the demand curve. Second is demand curve, which is demand curve shift either to the left or to the right. There are a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. That is, when the price increases, quantity demanded will decrease, and if the price decreases, then quantity demanded will increase. Marshall chose to ignore the inconsistency he introduced by assuming that the purchasing power of money is constant. When the price of product falls, two effects are at work that increase the quantity purchased. Marshall focused on two, which are the substitution effect or the relative price effect and income effect. Now, we are going to discuss about consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the difference between the total expenditures consumers would be willing to pay and what they actually pay. The total satisfaction a person gets from purchasing successive units of a good exceeds the sacrifices required to pay for the good. Increasing significantly in a productive social environment will produce more efficiently when the price of goods falls. On the diagram above, consumer surplus is the area below the demand curve and above the market price. The elasticity of demand. Marshall stated that the demand curve slopes downward to the right because the lower the price, the more the consumer will buy. Elasticity of demand will tell us whether the diminution of desire is slow or rapid as the quantity increases. The formula for elasticity of demand is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Elasticity of market tends to be great when a good price is greater than size of buyer's income. There are three types of elasticity of demand. First is demand elastic, which is elasticity of demand more than 1. The second one is demand inelastic, which is elasticity of demand less than 1. And the third is unit elastic, which is elasticity of demand equal to 1. Marshall said that a lowering of the price results in many more buyers being able to afford products. The figure above shows the elasticity of demand. Graph A is elastic. From this graph, percentage change in quantity demanded is greater than percentage change in price. Graph B is inelastic. Percentage change in quantity demanded is smaller than the percentage change in price. Graph C is unit elastic, which means the percentage change in quantity demanded equal to percentage change in price. Graph D is perfectly elastic, when the percentage of change in quantity demanded is infinite, even if the percentage change in price is 0. The final graph is perfectly inelastic. This means that a small change in price will have a large change in quantity demanded. That's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hi and very good morning. So this part is about supply. Okay, Marshall said that supply is determined by cost of production. Also, for purpose of exposition, Marshall have divided time into 3 periods, which is one is intermediate past, second one is short run, and the last one is long run. For intermediate present, market price is referring to the present with no time allowed for adaptation of the quantity supplied to change in demand. So quantity supplied cannot be increased in response to a sudden increase in demand, nor should the quantity supplied be immediately reduced in response to a decrease in demand. It is because it will take time for the production to reduce the inventory. Okay, next. The market supply is sloping upward and shift to the right until it includes the total quantity on the market. Then it will become vertical because no matter how high the market price is, no quantity can be supplied during the market period. Next is short run. In short run, Marshall divided cost into two types, which is the first one is supplementary cost, as known as fixed cost, and the second one is prime cost, as known as variable cost. For fixed costs, they cannot be changed in short run, such as top executive salaries and plant depreciation, because they are constant. For variable costs, it is include those for labor and raw material that change over the short run according to changing level of output. Next, short run supply curve is upward sloping and to the right, which is the higher the product price, the larger the quantity being supplied. Okay, in the long run, all costs are variable and they all must be covered if the firm is continuing in the business. If the price is rising, such as total revenue exceed the total cost of production, capital will enter the industry and the market supply will increase. So the supply curve will shift rightward. But if the price falls below the average of production, capital will withdraw and probably going to exit the firm, and the supply curve will shift to the leftward. So next is equilibrium price and quantity in graph representation. So this figure is showing Marshall's equilibrium price and quantity where the demand is equal to supply. BCE point is showing the consumer surplus and ABE is showing producer surplus. Okay. In the short run, an increase in demand will bring increases in the price, either because less workers' quality or because longer work days are needed to increase in output. But in the long run, more factory can be built and more workers can be attracted to the industry and they will be trained. So supply can then be increased without rising in the price or even decrease in the price. So that's all for me.
For conclusion, we can see that the three different schools has different ways and methods in determining their market price. Adam Smith from classical school focused more on supply side or cost of production, while Gibbons from marginalist economics focused on demand side or utility. And lastly, Alfred Marshall from the neoclassical school emphasized both demand and supply as a significant determinant of their market price. So that's all from us. Thank you.